Well, there have been protests right across the country after the carbon tax was raised earlier this week. Now, the government says the increase also means larger rebates for us all.
So just how exactly does the carbon tax work? With more on that, money expert Rubina Ahmed-Haq joins us. Rubina, we were just going back and forth on the commercial break about how this works. So let's settle some of this. Okay, the carbon tax. The opposition says Canadians simply can't afford it. Many people will be getting rebates. Can you break down the carbon tax and just exactly how it works?
So I call it carbon pricing because this is something that they're doing across the globe. This is not just exclusive to Canada. I think that that's something that we don't generally talk about. And this is the price of using something that is polluting the environment. So, for example, when you take a flight, sometimes they say, would you like to offset your carbon footprint? It's kind of like that, but now baked into every single time we fill up at the gas station, we heat our homes with fossil fuel. And what really they're trying to do with carbon pricing is to curb behavior. It's just like when the plastic bag was first introduced to cost 10, 15 cents, that all of a sudden we curbed our behavior because we have to pay 10, 15 cents every time we go in. And then eventually we started taking those cloth bags in, and now it's just become habit that you pick up that, that reusable bag whenever you go to the grocery store. And so carbon pricing works in the same way. And what is often misunderstood is that it's really targeting big polluters like corporations and big companies that are the ones that are paying the most for polluting the environment. We get money back in rebates. In some cases, according to the federal government, 8 out of 10 families get more rebate back than what they'd actually pay in carbon pricing. And so that offsets those costs.
All right, that was our next question, because I think there's also a lot of confusion when it comes to these rebates. Do we know how much the average family can expect in a rebate? And will it be more or less than they pay out when it comes to carbon pricing or the carbon tax, or does that all depend on how much you modify your own behavior?
Yeah, so a lot of it has to do with modifying your own behavior, but it also, because the price of carbon has gone up, the rebates have also increased. So, for example, in Ontario, every quarter, an Ontario family of 4 gets $280. Now, the federal government is saying that through their calculation, that, like I said, 8 out of 10 families will get more back in rebates than they actually pay in carbon pricing. It really depends on which province you live in. If a province has created its own way of pricing carbon, then the rebates work differently than if they didn't. So in Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, for example, Alberta, they get some of the highest rebates, close to $1,800 over a year for a family of 4. And that really is to reflect the fact that that carbon is costing us when we fill up at the gas station, when we heat our homes, when we do anything that has to do with fossil fuel, and that those rebates are supposed to cover those costs. It just hurts us because when we do go to the gas station, we are filling up for more, and that, on a monthly basis can really mess with our monthly budgets and hurt our bottom line.
That was a great explanation, but because the pricing and the rebate, and if that cancels each other out for most of Canadians, and if this is really targeted for the larger carbon consumer, I don't know why you just don't develop a program that goes after that group.
I mean, that's a question for a politician, not for me. I've done a lot of reading on carbon pricing across the globe, and this is one of the solutions that governments across the country, across the world, have come up with to help fight climate change. We have to curb our behavior. We have to use less fossil fuels. We have to do what's better for the environment, and this is one of the ways that countries, not just Canada, are doing to help people understand that to pollute the environment, there is a price for that.
All right. Moving along here, I also wanted to ask you, because April is tax season, and according to StatsCan, there's new numbers out, Rubina, that the number of Canadians contributing to registered retirement savings plans is shrinking.
Yes, and this comes at a time where inflation was at its highest. 2022 is when we saw inflation peak at 8.1% in the month of July. And a lot of people, look at that number and say, okay, things are costing more. Where can I cut back? Often savings is the first thing to go, because that is the easiest one to cut back on and say, okay, more money towards groceries, less money towards our RRSP. It did come after 2 years of increased savings, because in 2020 and 2021, during the pandemic, a lot of families families, especially and individuals. We saw things like our transportation costs fall, our child's activities were no longer happening, so we had that extra money to save. But 2022 was a year that was very expensive for Canadians, and that's when we saw a lot of families simply not being able to afford to put money away into their RRSP. And the one thing that's most concerning is that key demographic, 25 to 44, where it counts the most when you are saving, and those at that age were the ones that saw the biggest shrinking of their savings. And I can't stress enough how important it is to save early for your retirement and to keep up that savings habit, especially from a young age. Even if you can't afford to put in as much, continue to do it, because it's hard to get back into it once your salary increases.
Yeah, that's good advice, because that number that RRSP's contributions are down, that is concerning.
Yeah, for sure. All right, we're going to have to leave it there, Rubina. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
All right, and I'm writing that letter to the politicians right now.
Yes.
On it.
A strongly worded letter.
That's the best we can do.